Ground vehicles occupy an interesting place in the Star Citizen lineup, often falling into very niche, specialist use cases rather than the general purpose nature of many of the space vehicles. And the Tumbril Nova Tank certainly falls into that category, marrying a huge, futuristic cannon with some very traditional wheels and tracks. So the key question is, how does it stack up in-game? I'm Forrester, and in this video we'll take a detailed look at the Tumbril Nova Tank and how it currently drives in-game. As a ground vehicle, I'll need to depart a little from the usual review format, so for this video we'll cover a tour of the Nova, look at that armament and consider combat performance, look at how the Nova feels to drive and see out of, before wrapping it all up in a neat summary. I've included timestamps in the video description in case you're looking for a specific part of the review. And if you enjoy this kind of video and aren't yet subscribed, you really might like to, as I regularly post up Star Citizen ship reviews where we go into similar detail, and you may like to be notified when they go live. Okay, let's start by taking a look around the Nova. Entry to the Nova is via a door at the back of the vehicle in a similar style to that of the Israeli Merkava tank. This leads into the internal crew compartment. The fighting compartment is suitably futuristic but also military rugged and surprisingly spacious. At the rear of the tank by the door is component access. And moving forward there is a weapons rack on the left or port side upon entry. On the starboard side, and visually distinct, is the primary gunner seat, which offers remote access to the main cannon turret. And then right at the front are two chairs, one on the left or port side for the driver, and one on the right or starboard side for the secondary gunner. What about combat? Well, as soon as you see the Nova, you know it's well armed, with the ominous size 5 cannon dominating the profile of this vehicle. That's a ballistic cannon with considerable damage output and up to 40 rounds of ammunition. What isn't so immediately obvious is that the Nova is also armed with dual size 2 laser cannons as an auxiliary armament, as well as 24 size 2 missiles as an anti-ship deterrent, or at least an anti-ship deterrent in patches where missiles are more scary than at time of recording. The cannon does huge damage if it hits, and so it's not surprising that from time to time you hear stories about people putting them on top of an 890 Jump or Caterpillar to use it as a huge bolt-on manned turret. That said, the maximum elevation for the cannon is 30 degrees, which limits its effectiveness as an anti-ship weapon. But against AI ground defences, which notably don't really fight back at the moment, the Nova is incredibly effective. There are a few different weapons control options depending on the crew configuration of the Panzer in question. As a solo player, it's possible to drive the tank and fire the main gun, predominantly at things within the driver field of view, which means a solo player can somewhat effectively operate the tank. Alternatively, that same player can stop the vehicle and enter into the remote turret from the driver's chair, which gives the entire rotation of the turret for the main gun at the expense of no longer being able to drive the vehicle. Add another player, however, and the options increase. A player in the gunner seat can operate the full range of motion of the tank, whilst the driver manoeuvres the vehicle around the battlefield. As with other turrets, there's a gyro stabilisation option to keep that main gun trained on your target. Alternatively, with a second player, they, or you, could sit in the secondary gunner seat in order to operate the anti-air/anti-personnel turret. And with 3 players, you can do all of those things at once. Defensively, the Nova carries 3 vehicle-grade size 0 shield generators, which don't really provide much by way of defence. Hopefully, with armour mechanics in the future, we might see the tank become more, well, tanky, but as of right now, that's not something that is modelled. The Nova additionally carries defensive countermeasures, which is a nice touch and gives a little more meaning to the visual smoke grenade pods adorning the turret. One of the most fun vehicles to drive around in Star Citizen is the Tumbril Cyclone, and being from the same manufacturer, the Nova Tank takes a lot of what makes that fun and incorporates it into the design. For a tank, the Nova is fairly sprightly, and although 20 meters per second doesn't sound that fast, as soon as you start turning and sliding the vehicle, you'd have to be a pretty cold person not to feel a certain sense of joy. For the driver, visibility out from the front of the Nova is fairly limited, but that feels appropriate for what is supposed to be a highly defended vehicle. Anyone that's been in the front seat of a modern main battle tank will tell you that it doesn't really give you a panoramic view, so the full windscreen up front probably feels appropriate. It's a shame there isn't some sort of modification to give a full virtual cockpit, similar to what you might see in some of the Asperia ships, as that would make for a much better battlefield situational awareness. Put all of that together, and what do you have? A big gun, the ability to drive solo or multi-crew with meaningful roles for each person. Surely this is a no-brainer, right? Well, traditionally, tank designs seek to find an optimum position on what's known as the Iron Triangle, that balance between firepower, protection, and mobility. Considering the Nova Tank through that same lens, it becomes clear that this vehicle is currently mostly about firepower. The weaponry provided by the Nova is substantial, but the protection is a little disappointing, at least in the current iteration, and mobility? Well, modern tanks use tracks because it's one of the best ways to navigate difficult terrain, because we don't have levitation technology, which exists in Star Citizen, and thus the main challenge with the Nova Tank: it's a great concept to evoke a strong emotional response. Tank, beefy, strong, fun, etc. It's a great concept, but ultimately its place in a game where most of the vehicles are able to fly feels limited. Ground vehicles in this game are highly situational, and that's certainly true for the Nova Tank. That's not to say in future updates there might not be a widening of those situations in which the tank becomes useful. Perhaps it'll be hardened against EMP attacks, which might give value to mechanical tracks, or perhaps there will be a much greater surface-to-air threat, which necessitates landing the heavy panzers for a ground assault. But at the moment, sadly, the Nova is largely limited to contrived scenarios. That's especially true because only a small number of vehicles in the game will be actually able to carry and deploy the Nova Tank, notably the Hercules series, although you can also kind of fit one in the vehicle bay of an 890 jump. So, is it worth it for 546,000 Alpha UEC or $100 of real money? Well, no, of course not. You'd be much better off spending that money on a vehicle, preferably one that flies, that actually does useful things. But if you're an in-game multi-millionaire and have the money to spend, actually the Nova can provide a lot of fun from time to time in those weird and wacky scenarios. Just don't expect it to be a daily driver. I know there's a lot of love for the Nova, so I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments on whether you agree, or whether you think I've been deeply unfair to this plucky little tank. And if you enjoyed this video, please do press that like button, as it helps me to plan out future videos based on what you like to see. Otherwise, as always, thank you for watching.